Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming. My name is Hollow and today we have a new Elden Ring build for you, all to do with the special interaction of the Blackflame blade and how it actually enhances your roars, this Ash of War, and turns it into a black fire burn, which, as you can see, actually deals damage over time to bosses or enemies in PvP, with some really interesting details, like with it being black fire, it does extra damage based on the health of the enemy, so big health bars of a boss, it's more damage. Or in PvP, if you catch them during a roar, say the roar hits them but they roll it and iframe it, well, the damage over time, that dot, the burn, it still applies and it still deals good damage. This mixed with power stance axes, other melee ashes of war, and bestial incantations leads to a very mixed playstyle of big heavy hitting combos with the weapons, burn damage over time whether it's melee or ranged, and some serious range space creation to confuse your enemies with the shotgun slings or the long range roars or the deadly axe combos. This is a really fun build with lots of options and ways you can modify it yourself. So shout out and thank you again to Josh for coming up with the build based on a thing we found in Things You Didn't Know in Elden Ring, that series I do. That's where we learned about this Blackflame blade buff actually applying to Beast's Roar in the way that it does. And yeah, now we've made a build about it, so it's cool. Let's begin with a quick explanation of this concept then, if you don't realize. So basically, what this is Blackflame Blade, an incantation of the Godskin Apostles, which causes your weapon to be engulfed in black flame. What's interesting about this incantation is how quick it actually occurs. It even says in the description, this can be cast without delay after performing another action, so it comes out even quicker than other incantations and other buffs. As you can see, the animation is really quick, so I can do an attack, and then I can instantly be buffing up. So it actually comes out quicker, like a quick cast, after I do an attack, so even better to do it like that. The downside of the buff is how short the buff actually is. It occurs, you have it for a few seconds, roughly 5 to 10, and then it just sadly runs out. However, while that buff is applied, you're going to be dealing extra fire damage with the black fire, increasing the damage of your weapon, and dealing that damage over time, as well as enhancing the Beast's Roar incantation, that really long range, incredible Ash of War. Now you might be wondering why axes? They're not exactly the most powerful weapon type in Elden Ring, that's for sure. Well, it comes down to the Highland axes, which have a unique interaction. You see, roars are actually enhanced by this weapon, increasing the power of the projectile. Combining that with things like Shard of Alexander and Roar Medallion, well, that can enhance the power of that Ash of War even further. So in PvP, that leads to the really respectable spam range attack that we have with this, which we can further power up with the black fire, which is just fun. Let's talk about the build in PvP in general. What I've chosen to do, as I'll show you in the build when I explain it, is run the Beast Incants, the Bestial Sling. Combined with the Roar, that makes up for an incredible mix of ranged attacks. A shotgun sling at close range, a medium to long range Roar, which you can of course throw out suddenly at close range for nice damage. The sling is going to be nice chip damage. You can do it while sprinting or just spam it like constant shotguns. It's really invasive and really annoying to deal with, and if you're good at spacing in PvP, obviously it's very strong. If they were to run away at far range, well then I have that time to quickly black fire buff up and then start spamming the roar for poke and harass. And like I said, if I do land that during a roll, it's going to keep hurting them. Even though they iframe the main damage, they'll burn over time. It creates this really fun mixture of close to medium to long ranged, just Ash of War or incant based damage. But then obviously I have the axe and a second one for dual wielding, for power stance. The damage of these weapons, especially when buffed up with the fire, is surprisingly strong. I find that this works best when I kind of harass them a lot with the various poking of the incantations and the Ash of War, and then they get frustrated and run in kind of foolishly straight into the power stance combo, which can do a lot of damage if you get the full thing off clearly. Something else we can easily do as well with a build like this is not over rely on the ranged Ash of War, but also pull out a melee Ash of War. So if I two-hand the offhand, I've got Sword Dance here, which is incredible, as I've shown in many builds, an incredible Ash of War for trading, thanks to the hyper armor you can get, and of course the big damage you can do, even with a one-hand or rather two-handed weapon like this. So sadly, as I mentioned, the axe weapon type just isn't the strongest. Great axes were actually buffed in 1.06. They Additionally, increased their attack speed, which is very important because they were terrible. But basic axes like these sadly weren't affected by these buffs, and I still feel like they could do with, say, an AR increase to bring them up to speed to compare to like rapiers or katanas or of course greatswords. Still, using these weapons as a surprise and a big combo, it very much works, as I can show you in the footage. Suddenly power stancing them with a full combo with a trade where they're not used to you using melee in this way, it can clean out people's health in PvP. Overall though, this build comes down to how clever you are with that spacing, with getting someone used to something and then swapping it up and suddenly surprising them. On the other hand, we do have PvE to consider, which is very simple. Black Fire raw spamming a boss from range and super far away at that is not only very powerful, but very funny and very satisfying. Of course, that damage does extra damage based on how much health they have, so boss health bars, of course that dot's going to deal more damage in PvE than PvP. And we can increase the damage of it by using the Ritual Sword Talisman, so dealing more damage when we're full health, as I'll mention when we go over the build. The tracking on the raw is impressive. Look at this, the first boss of New Game Plus, I'm able to actually, just while normal auto-targeting, keep track and snipe the boss out of the air during a leap attack. That's awesome. So yes, it's surprisingly good at tracking bosses from far away as well as when they're leaping around. Obviously, we also have the rest of our kit to work with as well. Whether you're working in other bestial incants for PvE specifically, like the big rock sling for a heavier hit. But I do find just keeping it simple with the raw and the fire buff works very well. Now, like I said, the black fire buff doesn't last long, but with how quick it comes out, especially after you've done a different action, you can maintain the buff throughout the whole fight without too much issue. And it's also a really cool animation, so I don't mind seeing it. Plus, with the long range of the raw, you can hit enemies from so far away. So out in the world, you can make use of that in very strong ways, but in a boss fight, max ranging the arena, it works well. All right, with all that explained, let's talk about the build and why we're using what we're using. So we have the weapons, of course. These are the Highland axes, which we have put into heavy because this is a strength-based build. Because this is a strength-based build using incantations, obviously the Clawmark seal is the #1 talisman for that, scaling off strength as well as faith. The armor is purely cosmetic. I just like the way this looks, especially the Caden armor. Whenever I wear this in videos, I swear there's always comments asking, what is that armor? It's literally from the Caden mercenaries you find around the world. For the talismans, it's the obvious Shard of Alexander, greatly boosting our attack power of our Ashes of War. We have the raw medallion for the raw attack itself. It's actually very stamina hungry as this build, so the Green Turtle talisman, that helps with stamina recovery speed, which is a wonderful addition. Then for PvP and PvE, you have a choice for the filler or last slot. For PvP, I like Erdtree's Favor for the extra health, stamina, and equip load. But for PvE, I certainly like the Ritual Sword Talisman, which increases the attack power while you're at full health, further increasing the damage you're dealing with everything. Since we're sniping from range and spamming the raw with black fire, having this running is a good thing. Lastly, for the Flask of Wondrous Physic, I just used the Poise one for PvP, and then we have the Green Burst Crystal Tier just for the stamina recovery, because again, this is very costly on your stamina as a build. Obviously, the Ash of War on the main hand is the Beast Raw Ash of War, the core of this build, and then I use Sword Dance as the offhand for potential trading in either content. When it comes to incantations, we are obviously using Flame Grant Me Strength to buff us up. And then we have the Bestial Sling for the quick attacks. For PvE, I like the Stone of Garang for the strong hits that it can do and from range at that. And then, of course, the core of the build, the Blackflame Blade. I keep it simple, though, overall. In PvP, I'm just buffing up and then using Bestial Sling and then the Ash of War. I find the Stone of Garang just isn't that relevant in PvP when I could be using a very powerful Raw that I buffed up with the build. For a quick look at the stats, though, while I am buffed up, I'm at 701 damage on each of the weapons, and then that's further enhanced when I have the Blackflame Blade equipped and active. For the stats, I've got 60 Vigor because that's just awesome to have for PvP. We have 23 Mind to get us over 135 FP. We've got 20 Endurance. You could run a little bit less than that for whatever fashion you want to run. 80 Strength as the soft cap for strength for power stancing. And then everything else is at default except for Faith, which is 17 for the minimum requirement for these incantations. But there you have it. That is the build and concept and my reasoning behind everything we've chosen. I find this a super fun mechanic. The fact that we can enhance our raw damage with black fire is just so cool. The raw has always been a strong Ash of War, but the fact that we can enhance it with these specific axes and the talisman, it's just great synergy. The little details like being able to burn an enemy even when they dodge it in PvP, or the extra damage based on health of the boss, for example, is great because it gets me to use axes in a fun way, and for me they're an underused weapon type in Elden Ring. Overall, this has led to a cool and pretty unique playstyle that I think works well thanks to the mix of bestial incantations in PvP. While axes certainly do fall behind on AR compared to other similar weapons, down by like 100 AR compared to basically the same moveset, I'm really glad we could find a viable way to use them in both PvE and PvP. Most of all, it's cool and it's fun, and that's what these build videos are all about. If you've enjoyed the video and would like to see more builds like this on the channel, let me know in the comments, or hey, drop a like on the video, it really helps. For now, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.